Hi, friends. Welcome to the Do Life podcast. I'm your host, Life Coach Layla, and today I have a special guest for you. My dear friend, Lydia Gilman, is the host of the Stepping Into Your Purpose podcast and is also an empowerment coach. So, Lydia, can you walk me through a little bit about what exactly is an empowerment coach?
Well, for me, an empowerment coach is just helping. First of all, hi, Layla. Thank you so much for having me here. It's so great to be connected like this. An empowerment coach to me is just helping people, and especially women is who I work with mainly, step into their full power. And we're all powerful beyond beyond what we can even imagine. But so many of us get caught up in limiting beliefs and lack of self-worth and things. And really to help us remove those stories which are blocking us from really stepping into our full power. And that's why I created the Stepping Into Purpose podcast, because I think that's the goal for everyone, to step into our full purpose and live, our full potential is everything. Yeah, that's what drew me into helping others. I've done it for myself and I'm still working to do it for myself. And I love helping others.
It's a never-ending process, right?
Yeah, it never ends. We're always evolving. There's always next levels, new devils.
Yes. I think it's so important to be able to live life from your purpose, because you just seem to flow so much easier. There's not as much resistance when you're trying to do things that is not in alignment. There seems to be so many problems and hiccups and issues. So when you're in your purpose, everything seems to work out in your favor so much easier. One thing you mentioned is self-worth. And I found that myself and a lot of my coaching clients recently have had a lot of troubles around self-worth. Can you talk a little bit about what your thoughts are there, and maybe some helpful tips and tricks to be better at that?
Yeah, I think it's probably the number one blocker for most human beings, to be honest. I think, and especially women and beautiful heart-centered women, like us, we often get caught up in a lack of self-worth. And I think I don't even know really why so many people who do have a big purpose to live and are really here to sort of transform, to help light up the world, and we do get stuck in this lack of self-worth. And it really comes from, I think we all have it, a lot of it from childhood. We were born and, in our very young years, we were just free and, full of the wonders of the world. And then slowly conditioning gets laid upon us and, the traumas, whether they be with a big T, really serious traumas, or little t, whatever it is that they layer upon us. And, we really do form a crust and a shell, and that we think there's something wrong with us, not what's happened to us or, the world around us, because there's a lot of dysfunction in the world, and it has nothing to do with us, but just human beings really suck it into and apply it to themselves, especially children. So I think a lot of it comes from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it I see is most people, women especially, tend to put the needs of everybody else around them first, and they take care of everybody. And there's a sense of reward. You get that fulfillment, that sense of fulfillment when you're helping everybody. The kids are bathed and doing good in school, the husband's fed, the house is clean, the animals are taken care of. And so you have that little bit of sense of self-worth, because you have that fulfillment. You're doing all the things, but then you forget to take care of yourself. And I've noticed when I put myself, I don't want to say when I put myself first, but when I focus on myself and my self-worth, that I can show up better for the people around me. And it wasn't until I learned how to do that I realized that everybody benefited from that, because it's so hard for us to want to take care of ourselves, because it almost feels selfish in a way. And I struggled with this, but I've learned recently that selfish isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially when everybody around you benefits from it. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the biggest thing. Again, from heart-centered women, especially when we have a family and things, we prioritize ourselves last, so often. And it's been a real shift for me to make sure that I do fill myself up. And some of my non-negotiables each day is to do a little bit of yoga, meditation. Those are my two main ones. And when I don't do those, I'm not a nice person to be around. Sometimes I just get short-tempered and things. So that's really helped me realize, okay, if I do those things and prioritize those, it's better for everyone. But it's that old thing of put your own oxygen mask on first, otherwise you can't help others. Fill your own cup, then you can fill your own jug, then you can pour into others. I mean, it's been said time and time again, but it's still hard to do when we're in our own family and we've got so many different people pulling at our needs, children and pets and partners and, maybe our own parents or friends. Yeah, there's so much, not to mention work and things. So, yeah, it's not easy. And I'm a little bit ADHD as well, so I find it really hard to prioritize and, to get the priorities in a row. I get so pulled in different directions. So it's something I still struggle with, definitely.
Yeah, same. I think the biggest thing I struggle with is I don't have any kind of system or routine in place for self-care. Like I try to do my wellness Wednesdays where, on Wednesdays, I try not to work as much. I try to do little projects and things around the house. You always have all the list of things to do. And then there's things that you want to do that you never get to do. And so that's my day. I try to do that, but I'm really bad at that because I always feel like there's so many other things to do work-wise that I don't make it a priority. And I think that kind of resonates with a lot of people is we don't make our self-worth a priority. Do you have any ideas or tools or tips or tricks to help us prioritize self-worth? Or, like you said, you do meditation and yoga. Are there any other things that you would suggest or recommend? Or do you have anything else in the toolbox that we should know about?
Well, I think, our time is so scarce these days. There's so much to do in our lives, and especially as busy, mothers and working and, all the things. What I do is I prioritize a morning routine, and then I sort of get those things out of the way first, not get them out of the way, but, implement them into my daily routine before I get stuck into the work. And I mean, that's not a perfect solution either for me, because then I'll sort of get antsy, like, oh gosh, this is taking too long. I need to get stuck into some work. And, but I do find, the first thing I do is I'll sort of get up and shower. I'll go out I've got a separate little room, sort of office at the end of the house in the garden. And it's like I do my meditation there. I do my yoga. My yoga is literally 15 minutes. I've got a video I do it with. And it's sort of different each day, but it's only 15 minutes. And so anyone can do 15 minutes. And it really does set me up. Then I'll do a bit of meditation and starting to try and get into that habit of journaling as well, because I do find that really beneficial. But that is one thing which gets cut. And then, get up, have breakfast and things, and I'm ready to start my work day. And so it's sort of built in. But the good thing with yoga, I find as well, is it implements that breath work as well, which is so good for calming the nervous system and things as well. So what I find as well is, not having a big routine which takes too long and really cuts up, and it feels like a block that you have to get over. Oh, I have to do that before I can get stuck into anything else. Keep it short and simple. And sometimes I put my yoga on 1.25, so it's a little bit quicker, and I'll get through it. Oh God, I haven't got much time. So we have to make it work for ourselves. But I mean, I'm really into habit stacking as well. So, I quite like affirmations and looking, sometimes you look in the mirror and do affirmations, and I'm like, oh, I'm never going to get time for that. But sometimes now when I'm doing my, my morning skincare and that sort of thing, I'll look into my eyes and sort of say a few affirmations. It's just fitting it in where you can. And I find habit stacking really helpful for that. Just adding something into what you already do every day. So yeah, that's how I do it. But like I say, I'm not perfect because I do find I get pulled in so many different directions. But I mean, just before Christmas, I turned 50 actually. Had my 50th birthday and I went
I need
to
to see some ID, ma'am. I don't think I believe you.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was a really big turning point not a turning point, but it was a real milestone for me. And I've spent so much of my life not really, and this is a self-worth thing as well, not really wanting to celebrate myself, just for being me sort of thing. I'll have parties for, my kids and my wedding was another thing. So it's two of us and it's celebrating us together. But just for me, I've really held back on that since I was a kid. And I'd have birthday parties when I was a kid. But after that, I didn't really do it. So I really made a conscious effort like, right, I'm going to step into my self-worth here and really celebrate myself. So I went to Auckland, which is another city in New Zealand where I grew up. So a lot of my old family friends are there and a lot of old friends are there. And yeah, a lot of people in my life live there. So my family went up there and had a big party, a celebration, big party, lots of people, and we got a singer and, it was lovely. It was during the day, like an afternoon, evening sort of party. And it felt really good. But in the lead up to that, I was feeling really stressed and just a bit nervous, I guess, and
Were you
I
just
was
like upset about turning 50 or upset about having a party or celebrating yourself? Was this the first big birthday party you've had in a long, long time?
In a long time. My 40th birthday, I was still breastfeeding and still had young babies. And actually, my husband's grandfather died just a couple of days before, and his funeral was actually on my 40th birthday. So I'm glad that I hadn't organized anything because that would have been awkward.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was upset. I guess it wasn't upset but my body was upset, like my nervous system was a bit dysregulated. I was just feeling antsy. And I think it was just nerves. Yeah, like, oh, who am I to do this? Oh, how's it going to go? What if no one comes? And all this sort of thing. And I realized that I wasn't doing my morning practices as well because I was busy and getting caught up in things. And as soon as I just went, right, okay, I'm going to do my yoga, do my meditation and things. And it really, it takes less than an hour in total, and it really did settle things down. So, and I felt so much better and I could be a better person to others. Yeah, prioritizing yourself is so important. But just, it's so interesting, this worthiness issue, it's really all just built up on, beliefs about ourselves, which aren't even true. There's just stories we've told ourselves and we believe them. But that's really the work I do, is to just help realize that they're just stories and not actually truth.
So there was a lot of like really key nuggets of information in there. I just kind of want to bring those back to attention because I don't want those to get lost because they were amazing. Number one, I hear from you is to celebrate yourself. Don't be afraid to celebrate yourself. Yeah. I love that. Habit stacking, I think, is amazing. I was almost going to mention it right before you said something because I love the book by James Clear, Atomic Habits, where it's about taking little teeny tiny steps to do something, and habit stacking is one of them. If you brush your teeth every day, do your affirmations in the mirror. Little things, if you can add a habit, something you want to incorporate into your everyday life, add it to something that you're already doing every day. I love that. And when it comes to self-worth, self-care, prioritizing yourself, it doesn't have to be a long, big, drawn-out process. Tiny little baby steps, taking 15 minutes every morning, waking up 15 minutes earlier than everybody else in the morning to spend time for you, with you, for yourself, whether you're meditating, journaling, doing yoga, exercising, whatever that 10 minutes means to you to take care of you and prioritizing that. If you have time to do more, you do. If you don't, you don't. We understand life happens, but taking that time, and if you can do it in the morning, great. If not, if it's as soon as you get home from work, or, maybe you take an extra 10 minutes before you go to bed to just show up for you. So show up for yourself before you can expect to show up for everybody else. And I love that. And I just wanted to reiterate those things that you said, because I feel
Yes.
like those are just some key takeaways, and that's so important. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that those are great things that anybody can do, and they're
Yeah.
super helpful. And even though they might seem small and minuscule, in the long run, they will be so much more beneficial. And that's something I try to do too, is, I wake up and I try to journal or exercise or meditate, and maybe one or all three, depending on how much time I have. And sometimes I prioritize sleeping in, and
Yeah,
so I
self-care
don't
as
get as
well.
much done.
I seem to prioritize that a bit too. But that is self-care, and I think it's important. And even if you don't have a lot of time, I see my husband, when he gets home from work, he'll sit in the car for like about 10 minutes and just sort of be, before he comes out and sees everyone, and that. I think that's a way of him prioritizing and collecting himself and transitioning into the next realm of his day.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to transition, because you got to let go of work and leave work at work. So when you show up at home, you can be present and available for your spouse and your children and your family and your home. Like, they're two completely different environments, and you have to mentally prepare yourself. How many times have you had a bad day at work and you don't give yourself that 10 minutes, and you show up and now you're crabby to your family? And it's like an ugly cancer that if you spend the few minutes it takes to take care of it, then everybody benefits from it in the long run, which is kind of the theme.
It really is, and it's just integrating it into daily life and not having to take a long time. Even, I mean, this is what I love about the popularity of breath work now, too, that you can just very simply, even at traffic lights or whatever, driving your car, if you're sitting on a bus or something, just take some deep breaths, just have a few tools in your toolkit and take some deep breaths if you're feeling stressed or whatever. And no one even knows you're doing it.
Right.
And the key is with breath work, I mean, it's so simple, just breathing in and then having your exhale be longer than your inhale. And that really signals to the amygdala, the real ancient part of our brain, that we're safe and that we don't have a bear running after us, because stress creeps into everyday life so easily. And it's not serious like how our bodies were designed to react from stress. It's just little things like, oh, I'm running late, or, something. And we get flooded with these stress hormones, which is so damaging. So, yeah, just finding ways to manage that.
Yeah,
It's really
and like
key.
you said, stress is a natural reaction that our bodies create to keep us safe and alive. And so a lot of the things that our body does in a reaction to being stressed isn't necessary for survival, especially
In
if we're
this
just
day
stressed
and
out
age.
about running late. But it shuts off part of your brain that's critical thinking. And when you're stressed out for long periods of time, it does a lot of damage. And there's a lot of neurological damage that happens from being stressed for long periods of time. So taking those deep breaths and just kind of being mindful throughout the day of, how do I feel, and what can I do about it? So yeah, absolutely being mindful of where you are mentally, cognitively, and taking the necessary precautions and doing what you need to do to kind of regulate yourself if and when possible.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's how a lot of these diseases happen, because we're just getting into stressful situations and our body doesn't know the difference. So our body's flooded with this cortisol, and that does, it's carcinogenic. So, yes. So it's just knowing all these things and just adding things to your tool belt, I think, is so important on a, day-to-day basis. But,
Yeah.
it's not easy. Like we say, there's so much to do in life, and really to know what to focus on, to what to prioritize.
Do you want to talk a little bit more? Because I think the connection between the stress in your brain and the disease and the impact that it has on your body, is that something you feel comfortable elaborating on?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I mean, we have in the brain, we have the amygdala, which is the really ancient part of our brain, which is what, like you said, what kept us alive and safe, in prehistoric times, when the saber-toothed tiger would be running after us. And so we had to get out of the way or we die. And so it just really fires up that adrenaline and gets us out of the way, and everything else halts, like your digestion, everything else stops because there's no time for that. I'm going to die. and it keeps us safe. But we're triggering that just multiple times a day in our daily lives with us, our busyness and our stress, and that gets triggered, and we get flooded with these hormones, cortisol, and these sort of adrenaline, which is really unhealthy to happen on a regular basis. And it has been linked to cancer and disease. Really, it's about nervous system regulation has been such a big thing I've been focusing on over the last year or so, consciously focusing on anyway. And I've done it for a long time before that without really knowing what I was doing. It was sort of just a intuitive thing. But yeah, it's huge because breath, like I said, just having a few breath tools like that, just signaling I'm safe, because you're not going to have time to take deep breaths and breathe out longer if you are, if you're running. Think about when you're running and really stressed, you're short, shallow, panting sort of breath. So it really just signals it's okay, I'm safe, and it helps you recover in that way. But yeah, it's really, that's why stress, I think that's why we have so many illnesses, diseases, cancer and things these days, because we're living a life which really isn't sustainable with our stressful lives. And I think, it's not easy to manage, but just having the knowledge, I think, and just to catch yourself and try and relax.
I think I'm a big fan of the physiological side. Dr. Andrew Huberman has shown me all the neurological benefits of it. But like you said, when you're in a super stress mode and you're shallow breathing fast, that's your body's fight or flight mechanism.
Yeah.
And when you do a physiological sigh, which is when you take a deep breath in through your nose and then you actually audibly sigh out, it signals to your brain and your body that you're safe. It can start to calm down. And no, even if you're super stressed, you're running late, or you've got a big meeting, like anytime if I'm going to do a speech or stand in front of a crowd or anything, I will take a deep sigh. You see a lot of athletes will do that sigh right before they go to the field or, on the course or track or whatever they're doing. They'll take that sigh and then they have their focus back. They're just that little bit of anxiety is gone. And so I think that's super helpful. And yeah, when you're in high levels of stress, not only does it cause cognitive delays and slows you down as far as critical thinking and everything else, but it does put your body in a state of dis-ease, which in long term causes disease.
Yeah, it's right there in the words, isn't it? Dis-ease. Yeah. I had chronic fatigue syndrome in my early 20s, well, mid-20s it was really. And that really came from not listening to my body and just pushing myself, sort of like what we were talking about, how we just push. And then suddenly, I think it's like your adrenals get quite burnt out. I mean, there's not even that much knowledge about it. And it's a little bit like long COVID, I think, as well. I've got a friend going through long COVID. It's very much like chronic fatigue where you just don't have any energy, your energy is all gone. And really the way to recover from that is, this just what we're talking about, really, just taking it easy and just focusing on these sort of nourishing exercises. But it took me about 1.5 years to recover from that. I think you're frozen.
I think that's key. Like you said, you're in a constant state of fatigue and you're just energetically drained because your body's spending all of your energy and all of its resources on keeping you alive because that's what it thinks the stress is for. It thinks you're stressed because it needs to protect you and keep you safe and alive. So when you stay in longer periods of stress, your body is worn out and it can't recover. It can't do the things that it needs to. Like you said, some of your vital functions start slowing down because those aren't important in a survival situation. So there's just a snowball effect of things that happen. And so when you start with taking care of yourself mentally and physically, a snowball effect happens, but on the positive.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's we can tune in to plug in really to that boundless energy, not having those blocks. I mean, I spent a lot of time in my childhood in freeze state. Like I was quite an anxious child, quite sensitive, like a highly sensitive child, really. And so I'd really absorb everyone else's emotions and really take them on. I think a lot of children do this naturally anyway, but I was sort of super, and there was, a lot of stresses and things as well. I think like in every household, there's different things, but yeah, I would go into freeze quite a lot. And I think that really does affect your, it does affect your nervous system, and you become quite dysregulated. And I think that sort of over time is what sort of led me to the chronic fatigue. Things can't just keep getting stuck and not have an effect, So, yeah, it's
Is that
been
something that you still struggle with often, or do you think you've kind of overcome that for the most part?
Yeah, I think I have. It was really, I don't seem to have that anymore. It was more when I was a child, and my blood would run cold. I'd get scared about things, and my blood, totally, your blood running cold. And when you think about that, that's very damaging, isn't it, when you look at it? But I guess I didn't know any different at the time, but
right.
Yeah, I'd always sort of think the worst, like if my parents were late to pick me up from somewhere, I'd like suddenly go cold and go, oh my God, something's happened. They've crashed their car. Yeah, very anxious. And it must have been difficult for them too, to have such an anxious child. But yeah, it definitely all sort of affected me. And now, yeah, like I say, now I think I just have I'm quite a lot more spiritual now, and I just have a trust for life. I know that everything's happening for me, and so that fear has gone away to a large extent. Yeah.
Now, how do you think you overcame that? Do you think it was just like through your own personal growth process, or was there anything specifically, like, can you pinpoint, like you just woke up one day and you're like, oh, I'm fine? Or, do you think it was gradual?
Gosh. Or... Like I say, I'm 50 now, and so I've been through a lot of different things over the years, and a lot of self-help and self-growth has really been my focus for my life. So I think it's just peeling back those layers over time, and sort of working out the difficult relationships and the traumas, and just healing, really, just being on a healing journey over a long period of time. And that's really what it takes. I don't think there's any quick fixes. But it is, just being on the path and knowing that there's nothing wrong with us. Inherently, we're all perfect, perfectly imperfect, beautiful human beings. And I think that self-acceptance is a big part of that healing journey too. And realizing that things aren't always your fault as well. Like, I think as you get older and you realize, and trauma is really not necessarily what happens to you, but if you're feeling quite alone while you're going through it, that's what causes wounds, So it was quite a different era growing up in the 70s and 80s. The parenting was a lot more hands-off, I think, and parents were generally younger when they had you, So I think you just get a different experience, And I wouldn't change anything because it's made me who I am, and I feel like this has been my journey. But I feel like everything's led me up to this point. So now I'm so happy to be able to share what I've learned and my experiences to others, and including my own children, And I'm sure I'll get things wrong too, and I'm sure I am getting things wrong when we can only ever do our best, But
oh, yeah, my children are grown, and I had a 3-hour-long conversation with my oldest yesterday or the day before, and and we talked about some of the problems that we had when she was a teenager and how our personalities clashed, and I think I did something that I've never known any other parent to do, and I'm not saying like I know a lot of parents nowadays, but back in like our parents, my mother has never apologized for anything ever a day in her life. And I apologized to my daughter, and, I explained why I did what I was doing and how at the time I justified it and I thought it was appropriate and right. And, and she was like, I understand that that's what you were doing. I didn't at the time. And now that you say it, I get it. And, I'm glad that we can have this conversation. So I think these emotionally intelligent conversations that we can have with our kids nowadays are not something that happened back in the day. So yeah, definitely different times, but there's no way to be a perfect parent. I do, as Dr. Shafali has a book, I can't think of the name of it, but it's about parenting, and it's
parenting.
Conscious parenting. And it's about, it doesn't really talk about parenting. It talks about how to fix yourself.
Yes.
Because that's how you become a better parent.
Yeah, it's all about us, isn't it? And how, and this is what we're talking about filling yourself up first, because
Yeah.
then we can pour into our kids in a like emotionally mature way. I've actually just last year I dived into a book called, I can't remember the author's name, but it was Emotionally Immature Parents. So it was basically I can't remember the exact name, but it was about emotionally immature parents. And it was very interesting. And I think a lot of us have had at certain times emotionally immature parents, and not that they're like that now, but at certain times, I think in my childhood, they were more emotionally immature, and we do bear the brunt of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, especially as you're young children, you're looking to them for everything, for affirmation, and they're caught up in their own worlds and their own growth and their own development. And that is where we struggle, I think. So especially, I think, for people of our sort of age, you don't look anything like my age, but if you've got a grown child, I don't know, maybe you are close to my age, I'm not sure. But, growing up in that time, the sort of Gen X's, I think every decade and every era has their challenges, but I can see it with that. I think a lot of people had emotional neglect in their childhood, and we were cared for externally very well, but sometimes just being seen and acknowledged and having our emotions validated was lacking, because it wasn't in vogue then. It wasn't really a thing.
Right.
It's been a blessing because we can bring that to our own children. It's an interesting journey.
I feel like we could talk about parenting forever.
I know, it's such a thing. But well done. First of all, congratulations for having that with your child. Well, it's not a child now, but with your offspring, because you have to be very mature emotionally and comfortable in yourself to be able to do that, and a lot of people can't in their lives.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm not going to say that it didn't hurt to hear her say, I didn't like you, or I moved out because I couldn't stand living with you, or because you're unbearable. Like, that crushed me, not because it hurt my feelings or my ego, but because I never wanted her to feel like that. I never wanted to be the reason that she felt like that. And that was more devastating to me than anything. And it was like, being able to have the conversation about, I thought I was doing the right thing and I was doing these things for your own good. And then her understanding that, I always wanted to be the parent that I never had. And I never really got to have good, emotional, deep, meaningful conversations with either of my parents. So the fact that I have them on a regular basis with my children is so important to me. And I love that they're all very emotionally intelligent for the most part. And they, we can have an open dialogue about like, hey, remember when I was this old and this thing happened? Yeah, I hated it.
Yeah. That's amazing. But you also have to remember that's the natural biology of human beings, with having this sort of aversion, especially to the mother, but to parents and their parents in general. That's how we're designed, so that we'll go off, fly the nest, and live our lives basically, and then they'll come back to adoring you and knowing that everything was for your own good. So I'm glad you didn't take it personally, because it's so not personal. And I have to keep remembering that. I've got a 14-year-old, and I have to keep remembering that it's like, we're going to be annoying to them. This is how we're designed, that your parents get annoying at a certain age, so that it pushes them into their independence. So, yeah.
And I think as teenagers, so I have, at the time of this recording, I have a 25, a 22, and an almost 17-year-old. And the teenage years have always been so rough. And I think it's because they're going through so much emotionally, physically, hormonally. I have 3 biological females. So that's there's a lot of hormones there. And at that age, there's so much drama and things at school and pressure and everything. So they've just got so much that they're going on psychologically, and we're their safe space. So it's okay for them to use us as an outlet. And I always tried to look at it that way when the kids came home from school and, Mom, leave me alone. I don't want to do this. And like, I would just get brushed off or treated rudely. And I'm not using the behavior or condoning this at all, but I'm just saying this is how I coped with it. Is I was like, okay, they've got so much going on right now, and I'm their safe space, that they feel like they can just blow me off and brush me off and be somewhat dismissive towards me, because then know I will love them unconditionally. And that's what they need right now, is to just vent and shut down.
Well, I loved what you said, though, because it's so true. And I've always thought that with kids, like often they'd go, like even when they're younger, they'll go for a weekend with their grandparents or something. Then we'll go pick them up, and then they'll be like, go sort of, and the grandparents will be like, they've been great all weekend, why is they're thinking, what am I doing? But it's a safe space. That's right. They know that they can just fully be themselves with us, and we're going to love them regardless. And that's a special thing, because a lot of children don't have that, to be honest. They have to have that mask on, sometimes even more so when they're with their immediate family. So that's kudos to you that you've allowed that. Yeah, it's not easy.
Thanks. And kudos to you for raising a teenager. Those things are hard.
It's hard, but I'm only like a year or two in, so I need to come out the other side before I deserve any congratulations.
I mean, you're surviving every day, so you get congratulated currently.
Yeah, it's a thing, and this is what Dr. Shefali's talking about. I mean, it's really for our own growth, isn't it? It's the favor is for us, because it's really helping us become fully who we are. Parenting's a great gift. Yeah, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it's the most worthwhile.
That's 100% accurate. Yeah.
But I think instilling these qualities and this worthiness in them, that we see them, that we love them. I mean, that's something they'll carry with them. It's a hard time, and they're so self-conscious, and during teen years, and just seeing them and loving them for exactly who they are, they carry that with them through life, and that's the biggest gift you can give them, I think.
When we're talking about self-worth, them seeing us have self-worth and take care of ourselves shows them that that's a priority, and it's important. If it's important to us, it should be important to them. And, no matter how old they are, they still learn from your behaviors and the things that you do and say. And so, don't think, my kids are grown, it's too late to show them anything. No, they're always observing, even if they mean to or not, and seeing your evolution. And it's never too late to start over, or to change, or to grow, or to be on a upward trajectory where you're taking care of yourself and you're prioritizing yourself and your needs. And it's never too late to start doing that, and to show, especially as a parent, to show your kids that that's important too. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who was struggling in her relationship, and she had a conversation with her teenage daughter, and she said something along the lines of, you deserve to have both of your parents. And the daughter said, I deserve to see my parents happy. And her mom was like, oh, because she was not happy. She was miserable in her situation and her relationship. And so that really just changed it. It struck, because it was like the whole time she's staying in this unhappy situation because she thinks it's what's better for the children. But the kid was 16 at the time and was like, no, I deserve to see you happy. I've learned so much from my children that I was like, who raised you? It's amazing. I'm happy for them and their emotional intelligence and all the things that we didn't have. I'm happy that they have them. And that's, why we talk about how it's so important to lead by example in the face of our children, because it's monkey see, monkey do. And our parents were doing that. And I think this entire generation has really kind of prided ourselves on stopping that and being like, you know what? This isn't okay. I don't want to do this. We don't need to do this. This doesn't make sense. And I think it's because we live in a society, in a world that's a little more accommodating, where before there wasn't as many options as we have now. So it wasn't as easy for the women to just up and leave their spouses. The world wasn't created for them to do that. And now that it is, it's like, hey, wait a minute, there's a lot of things that don't add up anymore. And now that we aren't prisoners or held captive, we can do these things. And I think there's a lot more freedoms that we know that we have that we didn't used to. So there's a lot of things that we can do that our parents didn't. And it's almost like I don't want to say I feel sorry for them, but I do to a point, because there was a lot of things that they just had to tolerate and deal with because they couldn't do anything about it. And I'm glad that we don't have those struggles and that we're teaching our children that they don't have to have that either. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in each generation has definitely come leaps and bounds from the one prior. I think I'd love this trajectory. We're doing great. We just keep it going. Thank you. It definitely took a village. I'm not going to claim, that I did it on my own for sure. Absolutely not. There was a lot of help involved. There's a lot of good people in their lives. And I think that's another whole thing that we could get into is how genetically raising a child is the world doesn't make sense for there to be single moms. That's not how life should be. And even though I was a single mom for a while, I had a village, and I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that village. And I know there's people out there that don't have that village, and it's just not fair and it's not right. And nobody should have to struggle like that. Well, Lydia, I feel like I could talk to you forever. I think that we should have more conversations. Is there anything that you didn't get to share that you really want to? Is there something that you want to say or promote or anything that you want to add to the conversation today? Yeah. Yeah, I'll add it to the podcast, to the episode, so anybody who's interested can get a hold of it. That's awesome. Thank you so much for doing that and making that for everybody. Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, it's always great to talk to you. I will add all the links and everything in the show notes. Can you tell us how to get a hold of you if we want to go deeper or connect one-on-one? How can my guests reach out to you? Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your time with us. I love having you. I can't wait to have you again as a guest later down the road. Thank you. Thank everybody watching. Let's go do life with self-worth.